Sam, look, I said, spinning my laptop around on our kitchen island. Just 6 more months at this rate, and we can make the first payment for that house by the lake. I could barely contain my excitement as I showed her the meticulous savings chart I'd spent hours perfecting. Every dollar accounted for, every projection calculated to the penny. The lakefront property we'd toured last summer was finally within reach. Samantha glanced at the screen, her eyes barely registering the color-coded spreadsheet I'd created. "Yes, great, honey," she mumbled, scrolling through her Instagram feed. Then she perked up. "By the way, I booked us a trip to Aspen for next weekend, just for 3 days. All my girlfriends will be there." I slowly closed the laptop, the soft click somehow louder than a slammed door. "Sam, we can't. This trip will cost as much as 2 months of our savings." "Oh, David, you're so boring." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "You only live once. I already paid with the credit card." My stomach dropped. "You paid with our joint credit card?" "Don't worry, we'll pay it off somehow." Samantha and I had met at a charity gala in Manhattan when I was 30 and she was 27. I was already establishing myself at Blackstone Capital, methodically climbing the corporate ladder rung by calculated rung. She was a vibrant interior designer whose clients included several minor celebrities and one major real estate developer. She wore a red dress that night that made every man in the room do a double take, but it was her laugh that caught my attention. Uninhibited and genuine in a room full of practiced, social smiles. "You're the only man here who hasn't tried to look down my dress," she said when I introduced myself. "I'm more interested in what's behind your eyes," I replied, a line that sounded smoother than I'd intended. She laughed again. "Careful, I might actually believe you." We talked for hours that night, standing in a corner of the ballroom long after the charity auction had ended. She was refreshingly direct, cutting through the usual social pretenses with a candor I found intoxicating. I asked for her number as the event was winding down, half expecting her to refuse. "You took your time," she said, programming her contact info into my phone. I was beginning to think I'd have to ask for yours instead. Our first date was 3 days later, dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village where the owner knew my name and led us to the best table without being asked. Samantha wore a simple black dress that somehow made her more stunning than the elaborate gown from the gala. We shared a bottle of Barolo and talked about everything from our childhood dreams to our current ambitions. "I want to start my own design firm within 5 years, she told me, her eyes bright with determination. "No more working under other people's names, executing their visions. I want to create spaces that reflect who I am as an artist." "That's impressive," I said, meaning it. "Most people don't have such clear goals." "What about you?" she asked. "What's your 5-year plan?" "Managing director by 35, my own investment fund by 40. I didn't hesitate. The path had been clear to me for years. She raised her glass. "To knowing exactly what we want." After dinner, we walked through Washington Square Park, the night air crisp with early autumn. She slipped her hand into mine without comment, the gesture feeling natural despite our brief acquaintance. When we reached her apartment building in Chelsea, I hesitated, unsure of the appropriate goodbye for a first date that had felt so promising. Samantha solved the dilemma by rising on her toes and kissing me. Not the tentative brush of lips typical of a first date, but a kiss that conveyed absolute certainty. "Would you like to come up?" she asked when we separated. "Yes," I said simply. We were inseparable after that night. Weekday dinners at neighborhood restaurants, weekend brunches at trendy spots in Brooklyn, gallery openings where Samantha knew the artists and whispered irreverent commentary about their work in my ear, Broadway shows where I'd secured house seats through client connections. 3 months in, I gave her a key to my apartment. 4 months in, she cleared a drawer for me at her place. 6 months in, during a weekend trip to the Berkshires, I proposed on a hiking trail overlooking a valley ablaze with fall colors. I'd planned to wait until dinner, had reserved a private dining room at the inn where we were staying, but something about the moment, Samantha windblown and laughing, cheeks flushed with exertion, made me reach for the ring I'd been carrying in my pocket all day. "I know it's fast," I said as I knelt on the rocky ground, "but when you know, you know. Will you marry me?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." We were married 11 months after meeting in a ceremony at the New York Public Library that cost more than my first year's salary at Blackstone. Samantha's father, a successful commercial real estate developer with a perpetual scowl and open disdain for my middle-class background, paid for most of it, waving away my offer to contribute. "Consider it my investment in my daughter's happiness," he said during our one awkward meeting to discuss wedding plans. "Though God knows what she sees in you when she could have had her pick of men with actual family connections." Samantha defended me fiercely. "David is going to be more successful than anyone in your social circle, Daddy. He's brilliant with money. And unlike your friend's sons, he actually works for a living instead of living off trust funds." I appreciated her support, but noted the emphasis on my financial potential rather than my character or our compatibility. It should have been a warning sign, but I was too in love to see it. The first few years were good, better than good. We complemented each other, or so I thought. My methodical approach to life balanced her spontaneity. Her creativity softened my rigid adherence to plans. We traveled, we entertained. We built a life that looked perfect from the outside and felt mostly right from within. When Samantha wanted to start her own design firm, 3 years into our marriage, exactly as she'd planned on our first date, I supported her completely. I helped her develop a business plan, connected her with potential clients through my network at Blackstone, and even co-signing the lease on her first studio space in the Flatiron District. "You believe in me more than anyone ever has," she said the night we celebrated her first major client signing, a tech billionaire who wanted her to redesign his Tribeca penthouse. "I couldn't do this without you." "You absolutely could," I countered, clinking my champagne glass against hers. "But I'm glad to be part of it." The cracks began showing around year 5. Small at first, disagreements about spending, arguments about priorities. I wanted to start saving aggressively for our future. She wanted to enjoy our rising incomes in the present. I suggested a budget. She called it a financial straitjacket. I transferred automatic deposits to our savings account. She made unplanned withdrawals for opportunities too good to pass up. "You act like we're one paycheck away from poverty," she complained after I questioned a $3,000 purchase of a vintage credenza for our already perfectly furnished apartment. "And you act like money is an infinite resource," I countered. "We make good income, Sam, but we live in the most expensive city in America. If we want security, we need to plan." "If I wanted to marry an accountant, I would have," she snapped. "Your obsession with saving is sucking all the joy out of our life." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was too cautious, too focused on the future at the expense of the present. But someone had to be. The child of divorced parents, my father a gambler who lost our family home when I was 12, my mother working 2 jobs to keep us afloat afterward. I'd sworn I would never face that kind of financial insecurity again. The lake house became my fixation about 2 years before the end. We'd been weekending in the Adirondacks with friends when we stumbled upon it. A 3-acre property with 200 feet of private shoreline and a rambling 4-bedroom house perched on a gentle rise overlooking the water. It needed work, but I could see the potential immediately. So could Samantha. That sunroom would make the perfect design studio, she mused as we walked through it. And imagine those sunset views over the lake. For once, we seemed to want the same thing. The asking price was steep, but not impossible with disciplined saving. I created a financial plan that night in our rental cabin while Samantha slept. If we cut back on unnecessary expenses, contributed a set amount each month, and invested it wisely, we could make an offer in 3 years. I showed her the plan over breakfast, and she seemed genuinely excited. 3 years, she repeated. That's doable. For a while, she stuck to the plan. We both did. Our savings grew steadily, and I began to believe we were finally aligned in our priorities. Then came the first major deviation, a spontaneous trip to Paris because her friend Melissa was going through a breakup and needed cultural therapy. 2 months of savings gone in a week. It was an emergency, Samantha insisted when I confronted her. Melissa was suicidal. Melissa posted 67 Instagram photos of herself smiling in front of landmarks, I pointed out. She looked far from suicidal. The pattern continued. A designer handbag here, a weekend spa retreat there, a complete redecoration of our guest bedroom because she was inspired. Each time I adjusted the spreadsheet, pushing our lake house timeline further into the future. Each time I swallowed my frustration and tried to understand her perspective. Each time I failed. By the time she booked the Aspen trip, we were down to the final 6 months of saving before we could make an offer on the lake house. 6 months of disciplined financial behavior stood between us and our dream. And she blew 2 months of it on a weekend ski trip with her friends. She grabbed her designer purse, the one that had cost more than my first car, and headed for the door. "I'm flying. If you don't want to, your problem. I'll be back Sunday evening." She paused at the threshold, tossing the words over her shoulder like discarded trash. "Don't wait up." The door closed behind her, and in that moment, something crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. We were moving in opposite directions. I was building our future while she was systematically destroying it, one impulsive purchase at a time. 9 years of marriage, and we'd become strangers sharing a bed and a bank account, one that was repeatedly drained by her living in the moment philosophy. I didn't wait up. I got up. Within 2 hours, I'd packed 3 suitcases with everything that truly mattered to me. I transferred exactly half of our savings, $137,892.43, to a private account she couldn't access. I called the credit card company and reported our joint card stolen, then requested a new one in my name only. I left my wedding ring on her jewelry tray next to her collection of Tiffany bracelets. And then I walked out. By midnight, I was checking into a downtown hotel, my BMW packed with the remnants of a life I was leaving behind. By 6 a.m., I'd emailed my lawyer to begin divorce proceedings. By 9 a.m., I'd blocked Samantha's number after the 15th hysterical voicemail, demanding to know where I was and what I'd done with our money. Sometimes a man needs to know when to cut his losses. The night I walked out was a Thursday. By Monday, I was in a corporate apartment arranged by my firm for visiting executives, meeting with Patricia Winters, one of New York's most formidable divorce attorneys. "New York is an equitable distribution state, Mr. Harrington," she explained as she reviewed my financial documentation. "But given the circumstances, particularly if we can demonstrate financial impropriety on your wife's part, we can make a strong case for a division that favors you." "I don't want to destroy her," I said. "I just want what's fair." Patricia gave me a look that suggested she'd heard this before. "Fair is subjective, especially in divorce. Your wife has already retained counsel, Gerald Hoffman." I winced. Hoffman was notorious for his aggressive tactics and scorched earth approach to divorce proceedings. "This won't be pleasant," Patricia warned, "especially once she realizes you've blocked her access to half of your joint savings." "It was my half," I pointed out. "I left her share untouched." A judge may see it differently. Moving funds on the eve of separation can look suspicious. "I have documentation for every deposit I made to that account from my personal earnings. I can prove it was my money." Patricia nodded approvingly. "That helps. But prepare yourself. This is about to get ugly." She wasn't wrong. The first legal volley from Hoffman arrived the next day, a demand for immediate restoration of marital assets and temporary support while the divorce proceeded. It was accompanied by a personal email from Samantha that vacillated between tearful pleading and vicious threats. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone," she wrote. "My credit card was declined at Bergdorf yesterday. Is that what you wanted? To punish me publicly? I thought you loved me, but you clearly never did if you could do this so easily. My father says you won't get away with it. He says we're going to take everything." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The divorce dragged on for months, each filing more contentious than the last. Hoffman demanded alimony despite Samantha's substantial income from her design business. He claimed I had hidden assets, forced an audit of my finances, and demanded a forensic accounting of our entire marriage. He painted me as controlling, financially abusive, and emotionally unavailable. Through it all, I remained silent in public, speaking only through Patricia's measured legal responses. I continued working, putting in longer hours than ever, channeling my anger and hurt into productivity. 3 months into the divorce proceedings, Lawrence Peterson, the head of my division, called me into his office. "Harrington," he said without preamble, "you've been doing the work of 3 analysts. The Milwaukee Pension Fund project you handled last month? Exceptional. But you look like hell." "I'm going through a divorce," I said simply. Peterson nodded. I heard. Nasty business, divorce. Been there myself. First wife left me for her yoga instructor. He shook his head at the memory. Best thing that ever happened to me, though I couldn't see it at the time. Led me to Elizabeth, 20 years and counting. I made a non-committal noise, unsure where this conversation was headed. The managing director position we discussed last year, it's yours if you want it. The partners voted yesterday. I blinked, momentarily forgetting about Samantha, Hoffman, and the divorce. Thank you. Of course I want it. Peterson slid a folder across his desk. Here's the compensation package. Includes a substantial bump in base and bonus structure. Take it home, review it, we'll talk tomorrow. I opened the folder, scanning the numbers. The base salary alone was nearly double my current compensation. The bonus potential was staggering. One more thing, Harrington, Peterson said as I stood to leave. That lake house you mentioned a while back, the one in the Adirondacks you were saving for? I was surprised he remembered that casual conversation from months ago. Yes? Might be time to pull the trigger on that. Nothing settles a man after divorce like a good investment property. He winked. Trust me on that. As I left his office, a plan began forming in my mind. Not revenge exactly, but a reclamation of the dream that had been ours, but would now be mine alone. 6 months after I walked out, Samantha requested a private meeting without attorneys. We met at a neutral location, a conference room at the Four Seasons Hotel, which I booked and paid for out of habit. She looked different, thinner, sharper somehow, her usual flowing designer clothes replaced by a severe black pantsuit that seemed to belong to someone else. The confident gleam in her eye had dimmed, replaced by something harder and more calculating. Thank you for meeting me, she said, taking a seat across from me. Of course. I kept my tone neutral, as if she were a challenging client rather than the woman I'd once planned to grow old with. I want to end this amicably, David. She folded her hands on the table. The way Gerald is handling things, it's not what I want, it's what my father wants. I'm open to an amicable resolution, I replied carefully. What did you have in mind? I'll move out of the apartment. You can have it. Or we can sell it and split the proceeds. I don't care anymore. She sounded tired. I'll drop any claim to your retirement accounts and stocks. I just want my design business assets protected and a fair portion of our liquid savings. I studied her, looking for the catch. What brought on this change of heart? She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. Connor and I broke up. It took me a moment to process this statement. Connor? My assistant designer. She had the grace to look embarrassed. We've been seeing each other for the past several months. The pieces clicked into place, unexplained late nights at her studio, weekend client emergencies, the emotional distance that had grown between us even before the Aspen fight. I see, I kept my voice level, though my mind was racing. You were having an affair. It wasn't planned. She had the audacity to look wounded. It just happened. We were working late one night and, anyway, it's over now. He took a job in Los Angeles. With money from our joint account, I couldn't help asking. Her cheeks flushed. Some of the withdrawals you questioned? Yes, they were for him. For us. I'm not proud of it. The revelation should have hurt more than it did. Perhaps I'd already emotionally divested from our marriage before I physically left it. I appreciate your honesty, I said finally, and I'm willing to work toward an amicable settlement. We spent the next hour outlining terms we both felt were fair. She would keep her business and its assets, her personal accounts, and her retirement fund. I would keep my investments, retirement accounts, and the bulk of our joint savings with a one-time payment to her that we both agreed represented her fair share minus the amount she had diverted to Connor. The apartment would be sold and the proceeds split equally. All relatively standard, all much more reasonable than what Hoffman had proposed. As we were wrapping up, Samantha asked, "What about the lake house fund? I know how much that dream meant to you." "It's just money in an account now," I said. "Part of our overall settlement one." She nodded, then said something that surprised me. "You should buy it, David, that house. You loved it more than I ever did. I was just in love with the idea of decorating it." "Maybe someday," I said non-committally, not revealing that with my new position at Blackstone, the property was already within my reach. As we stood to leave, she hesitated. Are you seeing anyone? The question caught me off guard. No, it's only been 6 months, Samantha. Right. She looked embarrassed. Of course, I heard from Melissa that you brought someone to Taylor's gallery opening last week. The grapevine of Manhattan's social circles never ceased to amaze me. That was Alexandra Peterson, Lawrence's daughter. She's interning in our department this summer. It was a professional courtesy, not a date. Oh, well, she seemed relieved, which confused me. Well, she's very beautiful. Melissa said you two looked comfortable together. Melissa should focus on her own love life rather than inventing details about mine, I said more sharply than intended. Samantha flinched slightly. Sorry, none of my business. An awkward silence fell between us. I should go, she finally said. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers based on what we discussed today. That sounds good. She gathered her purse and stood, then paused. I really am sorry, David. For everything. I know, I said. Good luck with whatever comes next, Samantha. The divorce was finalized 8 weeks later. I didn't attend the final hearing. My signature on the papers was enough. That same day, I made an offer on the lake house, slightly below asking price, but with a quick closing timeline and no contingencies. It was accepted within hours. Lawrence Peterson threw me a small celebration at an upscale steakhouse after I closed on the property. To new beginnings, he toasted, raising his glass of 30-year-old scotch. And to taking your advice, I replied, clinking my glass against his. Best advice I ever got was after my divorce, he said. My old man told me, Lawrence, success is the best revenge, but success on your own terms is even sweeter. Looks like you're on your way. I thought about those words as I drove up to the lake house for the first time as its owner. The property needed work. More than I had initially estimated when Samantha and I first viewed it. The roof leaked in 2 places, the dock needed complete reconstruction, and the electrical system was dangerously outdated. But the bones were good, and the location was everything I had dreamed of. 3 acres of wooded land with 200 feet of lake frontage, a main house perched on a gentle rise overlooking the water, and a small guest cottage closer to the shore. I hired contractors immediately, driving up from the city every weekend to oversee the renovations. There was something deeply satisfying about watching the transformation. Damaged structures being repaired, outdated systems replaced with modern efficiency, neglected spaces renewed with purpose. I approached the renovation the same way I approached my investment portfolios, with careful planning, strategic allocation of resources, and a clear vision of the desired outcome. I didn't use an interior designer, partly to save money, but mostly because I wanted the house to reflect my tastes alone. No excess of throw pillows, no abstract art pieces selected for their conversational value rather than aesthetic appeal, no statement pieces that cost as much as a decent car. The great room was transformed with a wall of windows facing the lake, allowing natural light to flood the space. The kitchen was gutted and rebuilt with professional-grade appliances and clean, functional cabinetry. The master suite was reconfigured to include a private deck overlooking the water. Even the guest cottage was renovated, providing a comfortable space for visitors or possibly a home office. As the months passed, I settled into a new rhythm. Weekdays were devoted to my new role at Blackstone, where I was building a reputation as demanding but fair, innovative but prudent. Weekends were spent at the lake house, overseeing the renovation and gradually making connections in the local community. I joined the Lake Association, attended township meetings when proposals affecting waterfront properties were being discussed, and became a regular at the small farm-to-table restaurant in the nearby village. I dated casually, dinner here, a gallery opening there, but kept my emotional involvement minimal. The divorce had left me wary of entanglements, particularly with the type of beautiful, sophisticated Manhattan women who reminded me too much of Samantha. Then came the day that changed everything, almost exactly 1 year after I'd walked out of our apartment. I was at the lake house for a long weekend, enjoying the nearly completed renovation. The contractor had finished the dock reconstruction the previous week, and I was standing at the end of it, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over the water when I heard a voice behind me. You must be the new owner. The place looks amazing. I turned to find a woman in her mid-30s standing on the shore path, a golden retriever sitting obediently at her feet. She was casually dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup that I could discern. "Thanks," I said, walking back toward shore. "I'm David Harrington." "Claire Nichols." She extended her hand. "I own the property around the bend. Well, technically, the bank owns most of it, but I'm working on changing that." Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine. There was something refreshingly straightforward about her that caught my attention immediately. "Nice to meet you, Claire. And who's this?" I gestured to the dog. "This is Watson, best roommate I've ever had. Doesn't eat my food, doesn't hog the remote, always happy to see me." I laughed, surprised at how natural it felt. "Sounds like the perfect relationship." "Pretty close," she agreed. "Anyway, I just wanted to introduce myself. We're neighbors, sort of. I've watched the renovation from afar. It's impressive what you've done with the place. Would you like a tour?" The offer surprised me as much as it seemed to surprise her. "I wouldn't want to impose on your morning." "Not at all. I was just about to make more coffee. You're welcome to join me." Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, why not? Watson and I were just taking our morning walk anyway." I led them up to the house, suddenly seeing it through fresh eyes, a stranger's eyes. The new cedar siding gleaming in the morning light, the expanded deck wrapping around three sides of the structure, the carefully selected native plants beginning to take hold in the landscaped areas. "This is beautiful," Claire said as we entered the great room with its wall of windows facing the lake. "So open and light." "That was the goal," I replied, heading for the kitchen. The original layout had smaller windows and more interior walls. It felt closed off from the very view that makes the property special. As I prepared fresh coffee, Claire wandered the space, Watson following dutifully at her heels. She didn't touch anything or open any cabinets, just observed with quiet appreciation. "You have good taste," she said finally, accepting the mug I offered. "Simple but not austere. It feels like a home, not a showpiece." "Thank you." Her assessment pleased me more than it should have. That's exactly what I was going for. We took our coffee out to the deck, settling into the Adirondack chairs facing the lake. Watson flopped down with a contented sigh at Claire's feet. "So, are you here full-time?" she asked. "I haven't seen much activity during the week." "No, just weekends for now. I work in the city." "Let me guess. Finance?" I raised an eyebrow. "That obvious?" She laughed. The Patek Philippe watch was my first clue. Then the casual mention of a complete home renovation as if it were a minor update. "What firm?" "Blackstone Capital. I'm a managing director in their investment division." "Impressive." She sipped her coffee. "I'm an editor at Riverhead Books. I work remotely most of the time, which is why I can live up here year-round." "Publishing? That's a change from the financial types who usually buy property on this lake." "That's why I could afford it," she explained. "I bought 6 years ago when the market dipped and this place had been sitting empty for 2 seasons. Previous owners lost it to foreclosure. It needed work, still does, honestly, but the price was right." Our conversation flowed easily from there. Books we'd read, mutual acquaintances in the Lake Association, the best local restaurants and hiking trails. Claire was intelligent without being pretentious, funny without trying too hard, and possessed a calm centeredness I found increasingly attractive. "I should probably get going," she said eventually, glancing at her watch. "I have a manuscript to finish editing by Monday, and Watson needs his breakfast." "Of course." I stood, surprised at my reluctance to end the conversation. "It was nice meeting you, Claire. Feel free to stop by anytime you are walking past." "I might take you up on that." She smiled, and something shifted in the air between us, a recognition of possibility. "Enjoy the rest of your weekend, David." I watched her walk away along the shore path, Watson trotting happily beside her, and felt something I hadn't experienced in longer than I could remember. Anticipation. Over the next several months, Claire and I developed a friendship that grew organically, without pressure or expectation. Sometimes she'd stop by during her morning walks with Watson. Sometimes I'd run into her at the local farmer's market or the coffee shop in the village. Occasionally, I'd invite her to dinner at the house, and she'd bring dessert. Always homemade, never fussy. We talked about everything and nothing, our work, our pasts, our dreams for the future. I learned that she had grown up in a small town in Vermont, the daughter of a high school English teacher and a nurse, that she'd met her ex-husband in graduate school at Columbia, where they'd both studied literature before she went into publishing, and he became a professor specializing in American modernism. That they'd divorced amicably after 5 years when they realized they wanted different lives. He craved the academic prestige and urban culture of New York, while she longed for space and quiet and a connection to nature. In turn, I told her about my childhood in Connecticut, my parents' contentious divorce when I was 12, my determination to create financial stability for myself. I shared stories about Samantha, both the good times and the bad, the dreams we'd shared and where we'd gone wrong. "You never talk about what happened," Claire observed one evening as we sat on my deck watching the sunset. "The actual end of your marriage. You mentioned the divorce, but not what led to it." I swirled the scotch in my glass, considering how much to reveal. She had an affair with a younger man she worked with, used our joint savings to support him. Claire winced. "That's brutal. I'm sorry." "It was a mercy, really," I said after a moment. "It forced a clean break that might have taken years otherwise. We were already moving in different directions. The affair just accelerated the inevitable." "Still, the betrayal must have hurt." "It did." I took a sip of scotch, feeling the familiar burn. "But not as much as you might think. By then, I think I'd already emotionally distanced myself from the marriage without fully realizing it. The pain was more about pride than lost love." She studied me thoughtfully. "That's remarkably self-aware." "I've had time to process it." I shrugged. "And a good therapist for 6 months after it happened." We were quiet for a while, watching as the sun dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows across the lake. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said finally. "Of course." "After your divorce, how long was it before you felt ready to move forward? Romantically, I mean." She considered the question carefully. "It wasn't linear. There were moments 6 months after when I thought I was ready, then days 3 years later when I still questioned whether I could trust my judgment in relationships." She looked at me directly. "But to answer what I think you're really asking, yes, I'm ready now, if the right person came along." The air between us shifted, charged with unspoken possibility. "And you?" she asked softly. "Are you ready to move forward?" I met her gaze. "I'm beginning to think I am." We didn't rush things. Both of us had lived through failed relationships and understood the value of building on solid ground. We dated properly, dinner at restaurants in neighboring towns, a weekend trip to Montreal, long walks with Watson along the lakeshore. When we finally slept together, 3 months after that sunset conversation, it felt like a natural progression rather than a hurdle crossed. Claire spent increasingly more time at my house, leaving a toothbrush in the bathroom, then clothes in a drawer, then her favorite books on the bedside table. Watson adopted my deck as his preferred sunbathing spot. My refrigerator began to contain actual fresh food instead of just condiments and beer. 6 months into our relationship, as we lay in bed one Sunday morning, Claire propped herself up on one elbow and studied my face with unusual intensity. "What?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "I was just thinking about how different you are from the man I first met on that dock. You smile more. You've relaxed into yourself." "Is that a good thing?" "It's a very good thing." She traced my jawline with her fingertip. "I have a crazy idea." "Those are often the best kind," I said, catching her hand and kissing her palm. "What if I moved in? Officially, I mean." I pretended to consider this gravely. "Watson too?" "Package deal, I'm afraid." "Well, in that case," I pulled her closer. "Yes, absolutely yes." Claire sold her house 3 months later to a young couple from Boston looking for a weekend retreat. She and Watson moved in permanently, bringing only her books, clothes, and a few cherished pieces of furniture. The rest she sold or donated, embracing what she called the liberation of less. "I never loved that house the way you love this one," she explained as we integrated her belongings into what was now our shared home. It was a stepping stone, not a destination. My life settled into a rhythm I'd never imagined possible. 4 days in the city, where I maintained a small apartment near my office, and 3 days at the lake with Claire. I learned to delegate more at work, to trust my team with responsibilities I'd previously insisted on handling personally. I discovered that the world didn't end if I wasn't available 24/7, that some decisions could wait until Monday, that balance wasn't just a buzzword, but an achievable reality. 1 year to the day after we met on the dock, I asked Claire to marry me, not with an elaborate production or expensive ring, but with simple words spoken from the heart as we sat on the deck watching the sunrise, just as we had that first morning. "I love you," I said. "I love the life we've built. I love who I am when I'm with you. Will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. We married 2 months later in a small ceremony on the dock, with Watson serving as ring bearer. Our guests were few, close friends and family who had supported us through the difficult periods of our lives and now celebrated this new beginning. Peterson was there with his wife Elizabeth, beaming with avuncular pride. Claire's parents and sister stood beside her, obviously delighted by her happiness. As we exchanged vows with the lake sparkling behind us, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain and loss, the recalibration of dreams, the unexpected gift of finding Claire when I was finally ready to see her. Later that evening, as our small reception wound down and guests began to depart, Claire and I stood at the end of the dock, watching the sun set over the water. "What are you thinking?" she asked, leaning into my side. "I'm thinking about that night 2 years ago," I replied, when Samantha said, "Don't wait up." And I didn't. I moved out that night. Claire looked up at me. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" I shook my head. Not a single moment. Every step, even the painful ones, led me here. To you. The sound of a car on the gravel driveway drew our attention. Did someone forget something? Claire wondered. We walked back toward the house in time to see a sleek black BMW pull up. The driver's door opened, and Samantha stepped out. She looked expensive as always. Designer sunglasses, perfectly styled hair, an outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. But there was something different about her too, a tightness around her mouth, a forced quality to her confident posture. She faltered when she saw us, clearly not expecting to find me with someone else. Her eyes darted from me to Claire, then to our intertwined hands with matching wedding bands. "David," she said, recovering quickly. "I was in the area for a client consultation and thought I'd stop by. I heard you bought the lake house." "Samantha." I nodded, keeping my arm around Claire's waist. "This is my wife, Claire. Claire, this is Samantha." The two women assessed each other silently. Claire extended her hand first. "Nice to meet you. David's told me about you." Samantha shook her hand briefly. "Congratulations. I didn't realize David had remarried." 2 months ago, I said. "Would you like to come in? There's still some wedding cake left." She looked past us at the house she had once imagined decorating, the house we had saved for together, the house that was now mine and Claire's. Through the great room windows, she could see our remaining guests mingling, the simple but elegant decorations, the evident happiness. Everything she had discarded for temporary pleasures in an affair that had ultimately led nowhere. "No, thank you," she said finally. "I should get back to the city. I have meetings tomorrow." "It was nice of you to stop by," Claire said, her kindness genuine in a way that made Samantha's practiced social grace seem hollow by comparison. "Yes, well," Samantha fumbled for words, something I'd rarely seen her do. "The house looks beautiful. You've done an amazing job with it." "Thank you," I said simply. She got back into her car and drove away, the sound of gravel crunching under her tires gradually fading into the evening quiet. Claire and I watched until her taillights disappeared around the bend. "Are you okay?" Claire asked, searching my face. I kissed her forehead gently. "Never better." We walked back to the dock hand in hand, rejoining our celebration. As night fell over the lake and stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, I realized that Samantha's unexpected appearance had been the perfect coda to our wedding day. Not because it represented any kind of victory or revenge, but because it had left me feeling absolutely nothing beyond a mild curiosity about what had brought her there. The pain, the anger, the sense of betrayal, all had faded so completely that seeing her was like encountering a character from a book I'd read long ago. The story was over, the page turned, the new chapter well underway. 6 months later, Claire and I were having breakfast on the deck when she set down her coffee mug with unusual solemnity. "I have news," she said, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Good news, I hope?" She took my hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "The best kind." My heart seemed to stop, then restart at double speed. "You're pregnant?" She nodded, her eyes shining. 8 weeks. I confirmed it with the doctor yesterday. I pulled her into my arms, overwhelmed by a wave of joy so intense it left me speechless. This house that had once represented a failed dream, a bitter end, was now the beginning of something I'd never dared hope for. A family, a future, a life richer and more meaningful than any financial portfolio could ever be. "I love you," I whispered against her hair. "Both of you." "We love you too," she replied, her hand covering mine where it still rested on her stomach. Later that day, as Claire napped upstairs, I stood at the end of the dock, looking out over the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the blue sky and white clouds like a perfect mirror. In the distance, a boat moved slowly along the shoreline, its wake spreading in gentle ripples. My phone buzzed with an incoming email. Peterson with a question about a client proposal. For the first time in my career, I silenced the device and put it in my pocket without responding. The work would be there tomorrow. Today was for absorbing the miracle of what my life had become, for savoring the perfect stillness of this moment between what had been and what would be. I thought about Samantha's dismissive words that night long ago. "Don't wait up," and how they had inadvertently set me on the path to where I stood now. Sometimes the end of one dream is just the beginning of a better one. Sometimes a man needs to know when to cut his losses. And sometimes, if he's very lucky, what he gains in return is beyond anything he could have calculated, projected, or planned for. As I turned to head back to the house, back to Claire and our growing child, I felt a deep sense of contentment settle over me. Not the temporary satisfaction of a successful investment or a career achievement, but the lasting peace that comes from building a life on solid ground with someone who values what truly matters.